It's such a pleasure to be with one of my idols, Geoff Thompson. Geoff, thank you for starting your day so early talking to me.
My pleasure. Thanks for staying up late.
Jeff's on UK time, so it's 5 a.m. I stayed up late. It's 11 p.m. Chicago time, so it's perfect. You're a morning person, I'm an evening person, so it worked out.
Yeah.
Geoff, you got so many accolades in martial arts, then later as an author, then a screenwriter. You've won a lot of awards. But for me, why I'm so impressed by you is, number one, you seem like you found peace. A lot of successful people seem like they're always chasing something and they never find peace. And also you seem like, you have a really good marriage to your soulmate, Sharon, you have your beautiful family. And a lot of people that I've noticed that are really successful in business, it's at the expense of some of those other things, whether it's their health, their relationships. What do you think is the secret to how you manage to juggle it all?
Well, I realized really early that everything I wanted was on the other side of fear. There's this like isthmus, this line of fear, and nobody really seemed to want to step over it. And I recognized that everything I wanted was beyond that line. So you could say it was a line of ignorance. It seemed like fear was the harbinger of doom. But I recognized later that it was actually the messenger of hope. It was saying, you're afraid of this fear. I like your logo, the lion heart. In esoteric encoding, the heart means the will. It means, so it's not the heart of the lion, it's the will. And the will is the causal body. It's like the working arm of the soul. So we have to master the will. The will is everything. So we have to have that. In the Zohar, they would say that you have the boldness of a young lion. But they say beyond that, we want to be as still as a mountain. So we have to master the will, but not like a young lion that's unsteady and still a bit unsure of its powers, but like a still mountain. We go to this place of absolute peace. And to get to that place, we have to negotiate fear. We have to stop making fear an enemy, and we have to make fear a friend. That's very easy to say, because when it overwhelms you, obviously thousands of years of instinct says run away, hide, freeze. And part of the debilitating nature of fear is that it creates cognitive dissonance. We don't understand it. This is silly. I don't even understand why I'm feeling this, but I'm overwhelmed by it. So this is what in Buddhism they would call a Dharma gate. You feel fear, you feel anxiety, you feel depression. So why not use that as a gate of learning? That's basically what I did. I was young. I was struggling with depression. The depressions were sporadic. They would come and go, but when they come, they would wipe me out. So eventually I just thought, I'm not living like this anymore. And I started to turn into the fear. And I started to face the fear and confront the fear. I wrote down everything I was afraid of on a piece of paper, on a pyramid. And I started to climb this mountain. And I realized after many years that I wasn't actually combating and defeating fear. And fear wasn't my enemy. It was just a natural energy that I needed to align with and alight with. A bit like if you look at a light bulb, you've got a positive element and a negative element. And then you put the two together with the filament and it creates light. You don't create it with just a positive element. And you can't create it with a negative element. And you can't create it without the neutral force of the filament. And the filament for us is our will force, it's our soul. So we've got this desire to succeed. We've got this fear of the same potential. We place our will force between the two as the filament or the firmament or the isthmus, the connecting rod. We create light. There's no longer good energy and bad energy. There's just light. So we can't do it without both energies. So what we do is we tend to recoil from the negative energy. We try to get rid of the negative energy. We try to run away from the negative energy like it's a monster. But when we turn into it and we embrace it, and as Ushaba would say, absorb 99% of it, this three-dimensional monster becomes a two-dimensional cartoon and it dissipates. So we're not combating and defeating fear. We are converting fear. We're converting fear to light or to consciousness. So every time I confronted a fear and sat in it and basically just observed it without emotion and without engagement, just observed the feelings and sat in it and stopped running away from it, it converted into the light of consciousness. In other words, I became more aware.
Mm.
And that awareness allowed me to confront the next fear and the next fear. So I was contracting the fear and expanding consciousness. And as I expanded consciousness, it pushed the fear out. Because, of course, once you've confronted one fear, you can confront another fear. You can confront another fear. So I went from being afraid of spiders in the bath with a very small reality, living in a terraced house with wallpaper peeling off the walls, in an unhappy marriage, working in a menial job that was, safe. It felt safe, but it wasn't safe because we were always being threatened with redundancy. It was just fear there all the time, just a lack of knowledge. So when I started to overcome my fears, I realized I could overcome all those fears. I could literally convert them. So I went from being afraid of spiders in the bath to standing on a nightclub door, facing down people that wanted to kill me, I mean, 4 of my friends were murdered during my time as a bouncer.
Wow.
A very real threat. But so you went from being able to hold that center, hold your will, to pick a spider out of the bath, to being able to hold that will when someone says, I'm going to come round your house 4 a.m. and shoot your wife and kids, and you're able to hold that sense of them. So it's a challenge. And for people like me and you, Lawrence, who are talking to people, we are shepherds. We've got a little bit of knowledge, and we want to give it to people that want that knowledge. We want to pass that on. We want to share that peace. We want to reclaim areas of peace in ourselves, and then we want to pass that peace on to other people. But there are energies in us and energies around us that want to prevent us from doing that. So it's not that feeling goes away. It's not that you don't get those feelings. You just learn to recognize it and go, oh, that's that feeling again. What's it threatening me with? Oh, it's threatening me with the same as it always threatens. It threatens you with the same thing. If you don't do this, I'm going to give you more of this feeling. But if I'm okay with that feeling, if I know how to convert that feeling, if I stop perceiving that feeling as an enemy and start seeing as a united force and not a uniting force, I can overcome it. So the idea eventually is that we reclaim all the territories within our own body and mind. We reclaim those territories, reclaim the food body, we reclaim the breath body, we reclaim the mind and the intellect. We reclaim the will. And then when we do that, we become a unified being. So we're no longer disparate and divided. We don't have demons in us anymore. So a demon is when there's a part of you that's divided, conflicted, still carrying unfinished business, sin, error, mistakes. People carry these things around with them all the time. And grudges, they don't want to forgive people, anger, rage. But all of those things contain light. So if there's somebody out there watching this now who's struggling with depression or fear or anger, or they can't forgive somebody, or they're carrying this grudge or this need for witness revenge, that's a block that stops the flow of natural energy. It stops the Tao. There is light in that. So if you denote it, if you remove the denotation, remove dissonance, all of these negative feelings, they're just take the labels off them. They're just energy. What can I do with that energy? How can I convert that energy? How can I take that energy and create a united being? How can I take that energy and serve other people? How can I take the energy and use it as a volitional force to bring peace to other people, to help people climb out of their fears? So the poet Rumi said that there's a field beyond right action and wrong action. I'll meet you there. But this field he's talking about, right action, wrong action, then the field of light that the two forces create when they meet a third force. So that field he meets on is beyond good and bad. So we bring the good and bad together. We need both energies. So we need to be able to control our right side. We need to be able to control our left side. So we're not too soft, but we're not too hard. We find the justice place right in the center. We create light. That's what we're doing today. It's difficult for me to get up at 4, and it's difficult for you to stay up till 11. No, I'm an early bird and you're late, but we still have to make the effort to sit down and do this. And so there's part of us wants to do it. There's part of us that's afraid to do it. We place the will force between the two, and we make ourselves do the podcast. We make ourselves start the business. We make ourselves stop when we're when we're rushing to give $1 or £1 to a rough sleeper, or even just a prayer, or even just a nod or doff of the hat. So we make ourselves do things, and when we do that, Lawrence, it sanctifies them. That means something that's divided becomes whole. So when you sanctify something, you make it holy. To make something holy is to make something whole. So if there's part of us that's divided, let's say if someone's suffering with anxiety or depression, they can sanctify that by, first of all, seeing what the messenger wants to say. What's the messenger saying? He's not just saying, get rid of this feeling. He's probably giving you an alarm. You're in the wrong field. You're in the wrong work. You're in the wrong relationship. You are courting the wrong habits. You are not using this energy right. You are courting unkindness. This is a reciprocal reality. This reciprocal, that's standard. What goes out comes back. Everything that's going on in the world right now, every single thing that's going on, we are all part responsible. Whether we're committing venial sins or mortal sins, we're adding to the karmic fatberg. So whatever's going on in the world, we're part responsible. But the great thing about that is that whatever good is going on in the world, we can be part responsible for that. We can be part responsible for peace, bringing love. But we can't do that if we haven't got peace in ourselves, if we haven't got love in ourselves, if we're not balanced within ourselves, if we're not united. How can we help other people? So I like to see Christ, the Buddha, Muhammad, Guru Nanak, the Lama, any of the great prophets. I like to see them as antioxidants. They're like global antioxidants. They meet the free radical of fear, of anger, of violence. But the free radical is the incomplete molecule that comes into the body and steals molecules off other steals electrolytes off other molecules and destroys them. The antioxidant doesn't kill this free radical. It just looks at it and says, oh, I know what's wrong with you. You're just missing a few electrolytes. You're just missing a few elements. Let me give you some of mine. So it donates some of its own energy. It donates some of its own. In biology, they call it sacrifice, interestingly. It sacrifices some of itself in order to neutralize the free radical. So I only want to please God. In other words, I only want to act as a neutralizing force to negativity around me and in me and wherever it is. So what started off as this is me going to war with fear, became, this isn't a harbinger of doom, this is a messenger of hope. It's saying to me, let's get unified. If you can unify the body, that's the most powerful force in the universe. Because a unified body becomes a mountain, it becomes a triangle, it becomes an element like that can connect to the akashic of everything. It can connect to everything. So I'm no longer just this lone molecule floating around the universe. I'm connecting to every single thing. I'm connecting to Indra's web. I'm connecting to everything that ever happened and everything that ever can happen. And I can pass it on to other people by doing what I'm doing now. But believe me, there are elements in me that don't want to do that because they're afraid. And I'm being called to clean those energies, to recognize those blocked energies. Like I was abused when I was a kid, that leaves me with trust issues. So it says, okay, you've got that, but that's a massive energy that you can convert by looking at it, by observing it, and by using it as fuel for consciousness, driving it into the work, driving it into the conversations. Instead of listening to that and letting it shrink me, just connecting with it, intercoursing with it, absorbing 99% of it until it gives up its light and I expand. And of course, I've got to pass that light on to other people. I can't hold on to it. That's what Rumi said. The water wheel receives the water and gives it all away weeping. That's the only way he stays in the garden.
That's
So
beautiful.
we've got to bring it in. We've got to conserve it. got to train it. We've got to impose it into the world. Just keep it moving, keep the river moving. And we're not looking for anything in return. I'm not looking for any profit. Now, trying to do that whilst at the same time making a living, because we're still making a living and we've still got bills to pay. That's the balance. Mm. But of course, if you're receiving this spirit, the Holy Spirit, or the philosopher's stone, or the elixir of life, the life force, if you're receiving that, it comes with its own vanguard, and it comes with its own blueprint, and it comes with its own voice. Will guide you. I'll say to you, go left, go right, go forward. Spend an hour with this person. Spend 5 minutes with that person. Don't spend any time with this person because he's not quite ready yet. It'll guide you. It'll be your advocate, be your counsellor. It will speak for you. So it's an intelligence that we unite with, a higher intelligence. But this all started with this idea that depression was my enemy. Fear was my enemy. The world was my enemy. Ignorance really was my enemy. So I started to convert my ignorance into knowledge by investigating it, doing a deep investigation. What does this mean? What's this about? So I went from at the age of, in my mid-20s, still working in factories, still massively afraid, an unhappy marriage, and, just living a kind of cloistered life of fear, really. I went from doing that to, tripping the light fantastic, traveling around the world, teaching for Chuck Norris in America. I've got on television interviews, on the radio, publishing books, writing films, sitting in a room for 12 hours with Orlando Bloom, talking about a role he's playing for me, working with Ray Winston, just working with Chris Eccleston last week. This is the stuff of dreams, but I know what my purpose is. My purpose is to spread light, spread peace. You can only do that from a balanced place. You can only do that from a unified place. That's what I'm saying to people out there, wherever they are now, contains all the ingredients they need to move forward. And the ingredients are the depression they're feeling, the fear they're feeling, the anxiety they're feeling. Investigate. If the world was a treasure map, fear marks the place where the treasure is buried. So those feelings that people are having, turn into them, investigate them. I know people take medication, people take drugs, people take alcohol, or they access pornography, or they gossip, or whatever they do to blanket these feelings. These feelings are a messenger of hope speaking to you. They're part of you. Your biology is beyond your biology. God is speaking to you through conscience, and conscience speaks to you through your sympathetic nervous system, giving you alarms. Why are you doing this? Why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting your body? Why are you persecuting the world with this negativity, with this unkindness, with this greed, with this envy? Saying, just trying to direct you. It's like a father trying to direct a child. Why are you walking into the road? Let me pull you back from the road. Let me show you the right direction. Everything that we're trying to run away from, Lawrence, is actually trying to speak to us. We just need to be brave enough to sit and go, okay, you've chased me for long enough and I can't get rid of you because before I even get there, you're waiting for me. Wherever I go, you're there. So talk to me. Come and sit down. Have a cup of tea. Please talk to me. Tell me what you want to see. And we don't want to see it because to see it means we've got to make changes. He's saying, why are you sitting masturbating, watching pornography every night and spilling your seminal energy, giving it away? Why are you letting that energy come in? Why are you having sex with your wife or your husband but thinking about somebody else and betraying at the very deepest level? Why are you being greedy? Why are you fiddling your taxes? Why are you throwing your slipper at the television and being angry at a cartoon politician when you're not even balanced yourself? And why have you got so much but you're still greedy for more? Why are you sitting outside Costa on a Friday gossiping about friends and drawing blood when you destroy their character? It's saying this not as a condemnation. It's saying as a correction. We receive energy. We conserve energy. We train energy. We put energy into the world. And if we do that, we can end up like Hickson or Higgin, just directional energy going into something beautiful. Not a martial art, but an art into something beautiful. You stand in the room with Higgin and he speaks, or with Hickson and he speaks, or I know you're a big BJJ guy. So these guys, they've got this energy and it's directional. So they're bringing this energy in, they're conserving it, they're containing it, they're training it, they're imposing it in a directional way. It's not spilling incandescently everywhere. So that's what we need to learn to do. But this energy wants to enter us, and it wants to work through us, this Tao, this chi or ki, but it's not going to settle in us. It's not going to alight in us if we've got 20 holes in the bucket. If our energy is leaking anywhere, it's not going to come in. We're just going to get the same amount of energy as anybody else. So we need to be hermetically sealed. And to be hermetically sealed means we need to clean the inside. It needs to be a vacuum. We need to empty all the negative stuff out. And we need to fill ourselves full of good stuff. So if you look at a light bulb again, a light bulb, literally happened. The light is created in a vacuum. So the glass bulb is in a vacuum. And it's filled with inert gas, and that stops the filament from burning out. And the filament itself, you recognize the filament as the human soul. The filament itself, they don't just put a filament between two powerful forces and expect it to create light. The filament has to go through lots of training, lots of processes, lots of heat and burning. It has to be prepared, has to be tempered. A tungsten filament has to be highly tempered so that it can deal with high levels of temperature. We're the same. We have to prepare the soul. We have to prepare the body. We have to be hermetically sealed. Otherwise, if I'm bringing divine energy and I'm not hermetically sealed, I'm going to be spilling it everywhere. And it's, instead of imposing spirit into the world, I'm going to be imposing dark spirit into the world. It's a reciprocal universe. What goes out comes back. But what goes out works. By putting negative energy out to the world, even if I just gossip, people don't think that's any big thing, but you're putting negative energy out into the world, you're putting a negative spirit out into the world, it's going to go out and it's going to work, it's going to spread, and it's going to add to every catastrophe that ever happens, and it's going to return to us. This is what Sri Aurobindo talked about. He said, you can't even begin to work, you can't even start to work until you understand causation. If you don't understand causation, if you don't understand that what you think and say and do has an effect, a very real effect, it's an effect that's going to go out into the world and work, and it's going to come back, to the sender. If you don't understand that, you're always going to be moving one step forward, two steps back. You're not really going to shift. So once we understand causation, we become afraid of God. In other words, we become afraid of breaking that law. So if we recognize that this reciprocal force is godlike, we know that goodness creates peace, and goodness is the antioxidant. We become afraid of being separate from that. So I have a fear of God, but the fear just means I'm afraid to be separated from it, because I know what happens when I do that. I fall to the left or I fall to the right. I'm either too angry or I'm sycophantic. I've got no balance in my life. So the idea is, like I said, we've got to hermetically seal ourselves. That's worth getting out of bed for in the morning. This is like altitude training for the martial artist. It's training at altitude. It's living at altitude. It's saying, I'm not going to have negativity in my life. I'm not going to accept it. That's difficult if 20 people around you want to gossip, or 20 people around you want to be unkind. If 20 people around you want to give their autonomy over to whatever the latest flavor is. So it's coming back to the fear pyramid again. The fear pyramid is saying all of these things that are in your life are talking to you. They're looking for unity. They're looking for a unitotal being, so that you can go out into the world and create from a place of peace, from a place of love.
The idea of the fear pyramid, I really like that, because one thing Geoff, that's been really insightful for me doing this podcast is we're coming up to 100 episodes, and I've spoken to a lot of people that I look up to or that are very successful in their chosen field. And it's very seldom is any of them does any of them not have to, at some point in their career or their life, have to overcome the imposter syndrome? And I feel like that's part of facing the fear. And I know with me, and I'm sure you'll agree, I started martial arts at just before I turned 13, and I'm 44. And I think that I gained so much from that, just from facing my fears. And you talked about this in your books. You said, if you're training at a place where you don't have some type of fear every training session, you're not really training more realistically enough. And I was always nervous.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was always a shy, introverted kid. And I felt like every single training session, I dealt with a bit of those nerves, the anxiety. Every single amateur boxing fight later, when I was fighting MMA, every single morning I woke up of the day of the fight and I asked myself, I don't have any problem with this guy. Why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. I felt like running and hiding. And by not doing that, by facing the fear, I felt like that transcends into things like when I changed careers in my mid-30s, and it was very humbling. But I had the mindset of course, I'm scared to start again and be a beginner in my 30s. But I knew that I could overcome it because I overcame fear through martial arts. So I really think if there's one thing, I have a 2.5-year-old son, and if there's one gift that I want to give him, it's martial arts, because I feel like that's a safe way you can transcend your fear. The way you did it on the doors of Coventry, I mean, that's like you said, you lost some friends, and it's an incredibly hard way to do it. But it's I can imagine that must have set you up for life, those years as a doorman, just facing the fear, night after night.
It puts everything into perspective. Because when I eventually started publishing books and doing television interviews, and the fear would rise up about doing live television, I would just say to myself, well, this news presenter is not going to stab me if I get this wrong. I'm not going to die if I get this wrong. I might stumble on my words and feel a bit embarrassed, but that's about it, really. There's no threat here, because I was used to real threat. I remember working with a woman called Karen Manderbach, who was a very famous American producer, television producer. And she said to me, Geoff, the television industry is tough. It's a tough business, very hard. And I said, well, Karen, in my last job, people try to kill me. I said, I'm presuming it's no tougher than that. And she looked at me and she just smiled. It's perspective. So it does set you up. The biggest thing I learned, you learn lots of things. You recognize that you have to go into the isthmus. You have to go into that line. You have to place yourself in that burning spot between the two forces before you access truth. So when I'm able to go, I want to do the door. I'm afraid to do the door. I use my will force to stand on the door. Suddenly, I am creating light. In other words, I'm creating knowledge. I'm on the door and I see things as they are. I see truth. I see what efficacy is, what works, what doesn't work. I'm working in the martial arts. I'm working in the martial arts, and I was working with the gods of the martial arts, my heroes, and they weren't teaching what worked because they didn't know. Some of them did, but didn't dare teach it because the whole business was based on teaching something else. Because what works is so rudimentary and so immediate and so kind of ugly in a way, so basic, but also beautiful because of the rawness of the truth. So the door taught me about what efficacy was, taught me a truth, but I had to go into that place of fear in order to find the truth. And I realized that truth is there for everybody. I mean, what got me invited to teach for Chuck Norris in America twice was the fact that I found truth on a nightclub door in Coventry, and I told people about it. And he was like, well, let's get this guy over to talk to our people because he's found a truth. And that truth, that certainty, in Islam, they would call it yaqeen, certainty. It's an attribute of God. It basically means that the truth is undeniably right in front of you. It's right there. But you have to dare to look into it. You have to dare. When people don't want to look into it because they don't want to see that their business is based on a lie. Because if I see the truth, that might mean my 7-figure business either has to stop or change. It might look and might say, oh, my relationship's a lie. I'm a lie. So people don't really want to see the truth. They're not invested in the truth. But when you get to a point where you can't live anymore, where your life is debilitated, you start wanting to see the truth. And then we find the truth by piecemeal. And when we find the truth, we make the changes. So when I got to my 5th Dan, many years ago, I remember being very proud. This is the master grade. I'm a master. I look in the mirror. I do not see a master. I see a man that can't even control his own waistline. What kind of a master is that? I was still addicted to sexual pornography. I was still angry with my wife if she didn't want, if I wanted to cuddle, wanted to have sex, and she didn't feel like it, I would slam doors, be moody, and give her a cold back in bed. What is that? Basically violence. It's saying, well, if you don't have sex with me, I'm going to basically withdraw love. I'm going to make you feel afraid. I was so ashamed of myself when I saw this. I realized that I thought people loved me on the door. I thought people admired me. Actually, they were afraid of me because I was a hair trigger. I was very physically capable, but I was just insecure. I'd be fighting at the drop of a hat. So I'd learned a lot of things, but mostly I learned a lot of things about myself. And the moment I saw that, I just thought, I've got to honor this grade. If I've got a master grade, I've got to honor it. I remember Peter Considine saying to me once that we get these grades not just for what we've done, but for what we're expected to do. So I needed to really start working on that. Otherwise, I wasn't congruent, wasn't honest. When we talk about the imposter syndrome, well, maybe there is an imposter in there. People always go, oh, there's an imposter syndrome, and it's because you are worthy of this, but there's part of you that feels that you're not. But actually, there's part of you that isn't worthy of it, but it can be worthy of it. So maybe the imposter syndrome's right. I know there was 20 imposters in me, Lawrence, 20 imposters, 30 imposters. I couldn't be trusted. I couldn't even trust my own hand in the dark. But this wasn't a judgment. This was just like if someone come into your class and said, I want to improve my game. I know at your level, you go to look at them and go, well, it's quite easy if you trim this and improve that. You've got too much fat here, or you've got, you're using this move here, but you could shorten it. I worked with Neil Adams for nearly 2 years in judo, full-time judo. And he would make the tiniest adjustments that were transformative. So this inner tutor, the intuition, the soul that teaches us will just say, adjust this, correct that. It isn't like it's battering you. It's just saying, oh, we're going to show you how to become unified. So we're going to show you how to perfect the game. So you're not scattering and losing energy anywhere. You are a directional beam of light. You are a directional energy. So if you look at a light bulb, a normal light bulb loses 90% of its light to heat. 90% of it's wasted. So it's only 10% of it is light. If you look at an LED light bulb, it goes through a chip, and the light is directional. So it retains 90% of its light. That's what we need to be as teachers, as human beings. We need to be directional. So we know, our light comes through the filter of the soul, and it's directed in a certain place. It's directed to a certain person. It's directed with a certain intention. So we look at ourselves, and it's not with a sense of judgment. It's with a sense of objective discernment. Yeah, I'm still doing that. I'm still flirting with one of the girls at the class, and that's not honourable. I'm still falling into gossip. I'm rationalising it, but I'm still falling into gossip. I've got plenty of money coming in, but I still feel insecure about money. I'm still greedy for more. I'm still meeting people and thinking, what's in this for me? Whatever it is, it's different with everybody else, but we find the aberrations, we find the obscurities, and we just work on them. So we become more unified. And as we become more unified, we attract more light, we attract more consciousness or more peace. And as we attract that, of course, there's a responsibility. It's not just about attracting it and sitting with it. It's got to keep moving, got to keep receiving the water, got to give the water away, weeping.
For people that are listening that aren't too familiar with martial arts, so when you say fifth Dan, that's your 5th degree on your black belt. So it's hard enough to get a black belt, and then the degrees are years and years of training. So you're an incredibly evolved martial artist, but you were humble enough, and you wrote about this in some of your books, where you realized that you couldn't control, like you said, things like your diet or your temper. And there's I always say that the biggest compliment is when I say someone is he maybe is a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's a black belt in life. And I love the fact that you have the honesty to self-analyze and look at that, because you'll hear in jiu-jitsu, there's all these stories coming out. And I've spoken to some of my female students who will tell me, I trained with this great practitioner of jiu-jitsu, but he's either hitting on me after class, and he's married, or he's like he'll be a bully on the mat. He's bigger and stronger and more experienced than a student, and he's submits him a couple of times violently just for his ego. And you hear those stories, and it's so sad. And it's so I love that analogy of, like you said, to be a master, it's not about being a master in one discipline. It's about being a master in life. And that's kind of what we started with, is why I look up to you so much, is because you had the raw honesty to look at yourself and look at all the other aspects of your life. And you want to be a black belt in all of them, not just in combat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What you ask yourself is, can I be trusted with the command of the commandment? If I'm being given command, if my intuition, if my soul is saying, this is your purpose is to go out and spread peace, to spread love. Your purpose is to be an antioxidant, to be in a room and that room be changed just because you're there, to be in a street and that street be changed just because you're there, to be in a city and that city be changed just because you're there. People are healed. People have inspiration, aspiration just because you're there. To do that, we need to find this balance. So we take the instruction and we want to find that perfection because we want to be able to follow what our dharma is. We have an infinite potential to expand, to grow, but we need to be unified first. So if, please forgive the language, but I can't mentor somebody if I'm looking at their tits. I can't mentor somebody if I'm thinking, oh, this guy's a rich businessman. I wonder whether he'll fund my next film. I'll be extra nice to him. I wonder whether he can introduce me to somebody. All of my networking is divine. Divine network is when the soul puts me in a certain place and I meet a certain person and I have a certain conversation and I don't know who the person is, whether they're rich or poor, it makes no difference. That connection leads me to the divine network. So divine network is when we intuitively talk to the right person at the right time, and you'll feel it. You'll look in a room and there'll be names and faces. There might be very rich people there. There might be very influential people there, and you don't know who you're going to be introduced to. And suddenly you're at a book signing in Manchester, and a kid comes up and he's working in the bookshop as a book stacker, but he wants to be a writer and can I interview you and try and sell it to a magazine? I'm working here just to try and get on. And this happened to me, and I'm thinking, I'm on a 32 city tour. My time I'm so busy, but I feel the connection. And I say, I'm in Huddersfield next week, which is quite close to Manchester. I said, I'll meet you and we'll have an hour. I end up spending the morning with him. But in terms of networking, it wouldn't be worth anything. Conventional networking. But that's not my network is divine. And I feel the connection. I feel this absolute connection. So I meet him, but I don't think any more of it. You meet and you move on. And then a week later, his sister calls me and she says, oh, you met my brother last week and he's been depressed and you really helped him. And we're very grateful to you. He wants to be a writer. He was inspired by you. I said, oh, it was my pleasure. But anyway, she said, I'm a producer. And me and my director would really like to do a documentary about you. We've heard about you. I would love to meet you. And I said, yeah, I'll come meet you. So I go and meet them. She said, well, we do documentaries, but we're going into drama. Would you consider writing a short film for us while we're trying to sell the documentary? And I said, yeah, of course, yeah. I said, I'll do it for free because they were nice people. That film got one of the biggest stars in the world on it, Ray Winston. It was BAFTA nominated. And that led to another film, which was with the same producer, which won a BAFTA. So suddenly I'd gone from talking to a young, very lovely young lad who was depressed in a bookshop with no connections to winning a BAFTA. And of course, the BAFTA is, let me just show you it. It just looks like a statue. But when you look at that, that is a conversion of darkness into light. This was one for a film about my brother's death from alcohol. Took a lot of courage to write that because nobody was invested in me talking about my brother dying from alcohol. Mum and Dad didn't want to talk about it. No one did. It was kind of a dirty little secret. Keep it hidden. Don't tell anybody about it. Be ashamed. I wrote about it with blistering honesty and it won a BAFTA. Now, that's water coming into the water wheel, Lawrence. That's a key. Can't just hold on to that. Suddenly I've got a BAFTA and I'm being invited to go and talk to places. I go into prisons to talk to prisoners, and they're saying, Geoff Thompson is going to come in and talk to the prisoners. Who's Geoff Thompson? Well, he won a BAFTA. Bring him in. So this is a key. I went into one of the into a prison in England, which is, they said it's one of the toughest prisons to get. You can't break in, you can't break out. It's kind of like it's an ACAT high security prison. You can't get in there, you can't get out. This opened every door. It got me in. I spoke to the prisoners. I passed on light. I revealed light. I spoke to them, and it got me out again. This was the key. This is magic. This is an Aladdin's lamp. This is the Holy Grail. There is energy in this that people go, who is this guy? Well, he's won a BAFTA. Oh, well, will he come and talk to the prisoners? Will he come and talk to the NHS? Will he talk to the nurses? Will he talk to our business people? That got me in. That got me out. So it takes you all around the world. It gives you a key into something. It got me in to do a TED talk, so I could talk about fear and forgiveness. So this is literally a conversion of the material into the emotional, into the physical. I cleaned my brother's story by putting it into a film that attracted one of the biggest stars in the world, who did the film for nothing. That's how it works when you start hitting the metaphysics. Won a BAFTA, and the BAFTA came with the responsibility. We want you to take this and talk to people. We want you to go to places and talk to people. To talk to people, Lawrence, I have to expose every part of me that feels as though it's an imposter. I have to expose every part of me that is an imposter. There are imposters in me. When they say there's an imposter, sometimes it just is an imposter, and that's okay. He's afraid, and he wants to be converted. So when they say, come to a meeting and come and talk at TED. Yes, please. Come and talk at TED. Oh, God, I'm terrified of doing that. That's 90 hours of practice. That's 6 months of building up to, and I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I'm not quite sure where I'm going. I'm not quite sure what to say. And I have to hone my story into a 13-minute talk for TED, and then go and deliver it. So I have the energy that wants to do it and the energy that's terrified to do it. And I put my will between the two, and I deliver a talk that once that talk is done, I think it's had 130,000 views so far. So far, 130,000 souls have received that. And how many souls they're touching, who knows? So I create the light by putting my will force between those two energies, and I create light. So it's not just a matter about, I've got a BAFTA. That BAFTA comes with responsibility. We want you to go and talk here. We want you to go and talk there. So you're constantly converting this negative into positive. You're constantly in that place of putting your will force between those two forces. This is what Viktor Frankl said, those who heal burn. But it's literal. To sit between those two forces, you have to burn. You have to consume energy in order to create light. But once you get to that place, once you're in it and surrendered to it, of course, there's a bliss there. When me and you were doing the talk, there was a bliss because we've brought that energy together in order to create light, because we want to bring peace into the world. So, as I was developing, I found loads of imposters in me. I found that I was divided and divided again. And the only way I was going to get rid of those imposters was to clean them, to convert them. So if I've got an imposter syndrome that's insecure, that needs female attention, even though I'm married, or that needs, to be sycophantic in order to get money, or to be dishonest in whatever it is, I need to look at that, and I need to stop feeding it. I need to let it rise. I need to observe it without identification and no longer do it. If my penchant is sexual pornography and that energy, that lust rises up, I need to look at that and go, that's not what I'm going to engage. I'm not going to feed that demon anymore. I'm going to convert it into light. So we become whole by removing the divide, but we don't kill the divide. We convert the divide. We're not here to kill dark energy. We're not here to kill dark people. We're here to convert it to light. We are not a killer T cell. We are an antioxidant. We're going to neutralize through sharing. that takes a lot of courage because there's a lot of energies in you and around you that are opposed to that. Of course, we need those energies. So we constantly want to get rid of that negative energy, but we need it.
Yeah, I remember reading a while ago, life has to be lived forward, but it can only be understood looking backwards. And I think you winning that award, that story is so beautiful because you thought you were just helping this young kid out, and it ended up in the great circle of life. And in business, as an aside, I work in real estate, my day job, and I always tell people when I'm mentoring them, don't chase the commission, build relationships. And even if you're doing work for free today, it'll come back multiple times when you have the relationship. And I think so many people in business are just looking for the kind of the selfish short term. Whereas if, like you said, if they're just putting good energy out there trying to help people, it does come back tenfold. And I've really noticed that is so true.
Yeah, it's the secret to perpetual motion. It's the secret to the tree of life. If we desire to receive in order to share, we will get abundance. That's the key. Yeah, so it's my thing is I'm going to meet this person today. I don't know what he needs. I don't know what to say. Please work through me. Please let him see God through me. Please let me see love through him. Show me how I can serve him. And that's got to be genuinely felt. And if there's part of you that doesn't feel like that's okay, that's the part of you can work on. Because anything gained where it's not congruent is always going to be short term. You might gain loads in the material world, but no peace. So ultimately, we're aiming to just constantly think, how can I serve this person? I can't serve this person if I'm busy thinking, am I attractive to her? No. Is she attracted to me? That's not what I'm there for. I'm there to serve them. I can't serve someone if I'm looking at them and thinking, what's in this for me? Where will this lead? Is this a connection? No, I'm not interested in any kind of networking. I don't care about it. I'm not interested in it. I'm only interested in divine networking. I'm led and placed in front of the right people. When I was at my apogee of spiritual development, when I had my first spiritual epiphany, which is what they call the honeymoon period, I would go into a room and I'd say to my wife, I wonder who we're meant to meet today. And I know we would meet somebody. And we met people, the kind of story I told you there. I've lost count of the amount of stories like that because I was open to it. I did not judge people by what they were wearing, what their position was, how much money they had. I just took the call or I made the conversation and I met the person or I sent them a book or whatever it was meant to do. I remember one guy writing to me called Nick from South Africa many years ago. Dear Geoff, I'm a student. I've got no money at the moment and I'd really like a copy of Watch Back. Would you send me a copy as a gift? He said, I promise you I'll pay you back one day. I remember saying to him, oh, God, this guy's so cheeky. But I liked him. So I sent him a book. I never thought no more of it. 10 years later, I get a call. Do you want to come on London Real, which is a kind of a big podcast? And I remember thinking, well, I'm not really that well known. I'm quite well known in niche areas, in cult areas, but not very well known in the mainstream. So I turned up at the meeting and I remember I was just thinking, I wonder why they've got me on. I'm very, very grateful. Anyway, this Nick said, you don't remember me, but 10 years ago, I asked you for a book and you sent it to me and I promised you I'd pay you back. I've done 4 interviews for London Real now. And I can't tell you the amount of light it's enabled me to spread because it was initially Brian and Nick, not just Brian, but he just falls over himself to look after me. It's enabled me to talk to lots and lots of people. And it's also obviously brings in physical returns as well. When I first started doing that, I was still mentoring a lot. So lots of people wanted to meet for mentoring and that. So you send a £10 book to somebody and it feels like it's a lot, but the returns from it were exponential. But I didn't send it with the idea of returns. I just sent it because I felt it as a divine networking, planting seeds everywhere.
Geoff, this
so
is
it was
so
very
beautiful.
directional. It's kind of just talk to this person, talk to that person. And other people I'd met other people who were worth hundreds of millions. And I just thought, I can't work with this person. They're just not in the right place for me. And they desperately wanted to work with me. And I just knew I couldn't. No matter what the benefits were, I just couldn't because I knew it was not congruent with where I was, and that also took a lot of courage to say, no, thank you. So I was led and taught by my spirit, my soul. That was my inner tutor. So you're constantly being shown places, even all the time. We're always being shown parts of us that are imposters, and we go, I see that. God, that's painful. That's painful to see that I am still such a hypocrite. I did not see that. And then you look and you think, yeah, well, of course I saw it. It was just simmer away in the background. But then you see it and you go, boom. But the way I am now, it's like I see it and I go, boom, I'm on it. That's gone. That is gone from today. That's gone from this second. That is not something I will engage again. Not ever, because I see it. And I do not want to do anything that displeases God. I don't want to do anything that damages my soul. I don't want to do anything that affects my congruence. The congruence is my ability to think and say and do in a righteous manner. So everything I think and say and do is in alignment. So what I'm thinking and saying and do is congruent. So I'm constantly, working on that idea of I can still trim this. I can still improve that. This is a leak. If I've got a leak in my hermetic seal, the light explodes out and I've lost it. It's gone and it's dead. It's a waste. So it's not like the darkness is wandering around like a roaming lion going, oh, let's see if there's any leaks anywhere. Let's see if there's any cracks anywhere. It's pressing against the glass, Lawrence. It's constantly waiting to filter in, a little whisperer in your ear suggesting something's a good idea when we absolutely unequivocally know it's not a good idea. This is about being constantly, a bit like being a bouncer, being constantly on your guard. If you're not on your guard, you may die. So with this metaphysical practice, with the Buddha practice, it's a matter of being in ceaseless prayer. So in other words, we're constantly on it. The river is constantly moving. We're constantly keeping the energy going. So it's not like you get to a place where, well, that's that done, because it's not ever done. The test never ends. You have moments of absolute bliss and peace, and then you have moments of torment again, because you're constantly growing. If I put you in your judo class now and you said to me, I'm at a place of peace in my class and I can just float through it, I know you're not going to grow anymore.
Yes.
If you're not at the bottom of someone else's class, you are not growing. And that's one of the problems of being a teacher, isn't it? We can control it. We can put ourselves in a class where we're just floating around. But if we want to improve, we constantly need to have somebody that can tap us out. One of my friends said to me, Geoff, he said, I'm a bit worried. He said, he had this little small grin on his face. He said, I'm a bit worried. I haven't been tapped out for months. And I said, well, that's because you're not fighting anybody any good. And he said, how do you know? I said, because you haven't been tapped out for months. I said, ask me how many times I'm getting tapped out. I'm getting tapped out every day because I'm in the room. And it's not like that's easy. Sometimes I remember being at Neil's class. I got 2 cauliflower ears. My fingers were pointing in the wrong direction. My elbows stopped working. I remember sitting in the car outside and saying to my wife, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here. I just got battered by a green belt. A green belt just battered me. And she said, well, that's why you're here. If you're not getting tapped out, how are you ever going to grow? It's getting to that point, when we're ready to jump up an octave to go, okay, I'm comfortable here. And there's no growth in comfort. So it's time to shift. And that shift might not be more on the mat. It might be more internal. My growth isn't on the mat. My growth is internal. In the greater G, I had it more internal. So I'm constantly working with energies within myself, keeping them balanced, keeping in that center column, that place of justice. And trusting that what needs to be exposed and converted will be exposed and converted, and I'll do the work. That's what true martial arts is. So that if we go in a room, we're a light. And that room is improved because we're there. My hero, Terry O'Neill, said to me once, he worked with Don Drager. Don Drager said, listen, our martial arts needs to be so good that if we're in a room full of people, those people are better protected just because we're there. And I love that. But I remember thinking, but it needs not just to be better protected because we can protect them. It needs to be better protected because they're protected against us. We're not going to kick off because they make a faux pas, because they're a bit disrespectful, or because, whatever. They're going to be protected because we're going to be balanced. They're going to be healed and they're going to be enlightened and inspired just because we're balanced. And they're going to be healed and inspired because there is no agenda. I have no agenda. My agenda today is just to serve God. And I'm serving that very gratefully, Lawrence, through you. And so we can talk to your people. And that enables me to keep the water moving off the wheel. So I want to stay in the garden. So we receive the water and we give the water away. We want to stay in the garden. So my martial arts now is just about the ability to improve that, as in, keep refining. Like a technique, I can show you a punch that moves such a short distance and it's so powerful that it will do its job so quickly and so effectively that if you're in a room full of people and say if you was on the door and you drop that punch, it would be so effective that somebody would be knocked out and the people around wouldn't know who hit him because it was so effective. It's so hench. There's nothing on it. Now, I'm not interested in punching anybody. I haven't done that, I haven't done that for, decades, but I'm not interested in that. But I'm interested in taking that concept of henchness. Like a bodybuilder, I want to be hench. I don't want anything extraneous. I want to take that to my conversation. I want to take that to my relationships. I want to take that into my business. I want to take that into the world. I want to take, if I'm in a cafe, even if I'm a complete stranger, I want to affect that room because that light comes through me and radiates out. I want that business to improve just because I'm there. I want the people in the room to improve just because I'm there. Not because of me. They don't know me, but because of what is coming through me. And I want to be a better vessel for that. And I can only do that by improving the vessel. And I can only do that by, as we said with the light bulb, creating a vacuum so that the light can shine very, very brightly. And creating the vacuum in the esoteric practice is called kenosis, self-emptying. So we empty the ego out in order to make more room for consciousness. That's a gradual process. And it's a painful process, but no more than being a Golden Gloves champion. It's a painful and gradual process. No more than being a BJJ second dan, which is a rare grade. That's a gradual process and it's painful. You don't get there without tempering the filament, do you?
100%. I love what you said about Nick, that story. He's actually a friend of mine. I met Nick Gregory's in about 7 years ago at a jiu-jitsu camp, and we just kind of hit it off. And then he ended up moving.
He's a nice guy.
So he's such a great guy. And Geoff, the reason he was actually episode number 1 was with Nick. And the reason I really like him, and it's the same with you, is I love the phrase you used where you said you have blistering honesty. And he's very much like that, where number 1, he, like you, he wants to be a black belt in life, not just in jiu-jitsu. And number 2, he's incredibly honest about his faults and the things he's struggling with and his challenges. And it's just so refreshing in a world where everyone tries to pretend to be more than they are, to have someone like you, someone like him. And honestly, that's why I love your writings. And your first book, so I know you've rewritten it now, but the original Watch Your Back, I remember reading that. And you talked about how you wrote it in your breaks, your breaks, and you went to the bathroom stall of work at the factory and you wrote it there. And it was obviously over time you can see, your English improved and your writing skills improved, but that original book is just such a great book. Did you know you had something special when you were writing it back then?
I knew I was meant to do something. I could feel it. And I know when I was working the door and I was working in the factory at the time, so I was just sweeping floors in the factory, and I used to come in every day and tell the stories that happened the night before to the lads, and they were riveted. So I knew I was aware that there was a natural storyteller there and that the stories I was telling were rare. People were living them voyeuristically through me. And one day my friend Steve said to me, you should write these stories down. They're really good. I was always a storyteller. I just didn't really have many stories to tell. No, I was always a writer, but I didn't know what to write about. And then suddenly I've got things to write about. So that first book was a happy accident. I just sat down and I just wrote it really as I told it. It was raw, it was honest, and it wasn't about a man saying, look at me, I'm fearless. It was me as a man saying, I'm vulnerable, I'm afraid, and I'm going to become a bounce because I want to investigate that. I want to explore that. I want to see why I'm afraid. I want to see whether I can overcome that fear.
Geoff, there's so many people now that make excuses like, oh, I would do this if only for that. And the reason that I love the story of you writing it, in your breaks at work on the bathroom stall, because it just shows that if there's a will, there's a way. But also,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about, didn't you have a lot of trouble finding a publisher and getting it published? It wasn't easy, was it?
Yeah. No, that's why I always say to people, they say, I'd love to write a book, but I haven't got time. I said, the problem isn't that you haven't got time. The problem is that you don't want to do it enough. I said, do you have a toilet at work? Yeah. I said, then you've got time to write a book. Because I wrote my book, I wrote the whole book in a toilet in the factory. Just give me one sec. There it is.
Oh, wow. The original notebook.
That's Watch My Back. Yeah, the original Watch My Back. If I can just show you.
God, that's incredible.
Go. You can see the date on there. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yep. March 1989. So that was it.
That was the first book, and then that's what it became.
Yes, that's the one
you probably read.
Yes.
Yeah, and then later it became this one.
Yes.
Then it became films. It became a stage play. I got invited into the Royal Court Writers Group in London. And one of the stories from this was made into a film a couple of years ago, starring Orlando Bloom. So it's become it's unpacked. It's like a Pandora's box. It's filled with so many things. But that's the original book. That's 3 pads.
God, I love that.
But I wanted to be a publisher. Working as a bouncer gave me the courage to sit and write, because I was always afraid to write. I just had lots of doubts. Who am I? Who am I to write a book and all that kind of thing? All of my working class conditioning. But, I realized as I was doing my fear pyramid that I was afraid of success, because I didn't understand what success was. And when I started to look at success had an egregore, it had a spirit. And it said to me, well, what is success? For instance, I spoke to a rough sleeper recently. I sat with a rough sleeper and had some breakfast with him. And I said to him, listen, what would you really like to do? And he said, I'd love to be in big business, and then I could help other people who are on the street. I said, that's really good, but what kind of business would you like to do? I don't know. Big business, just big business. That's good, but what interests you? What is it that you would like to build up and do? But he didn't know. So he's stuck in a lottery dream, Lawrence. He's like, he wants the fortune and he wants to do something and it's aspirational, but he doesn't know where to even start. So I was the same. I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know anything about the writing world. I didn't know anything. I didn't even, at the time, I didn't even know anybody that owned a typewriter. That's how small my consciousness was. But the moment I wrote the book, that's what the first thing they do. They say, first you do and then you hear. So the moment I actually did an action and I wrote a book, suddenly somebody appeared who knew a girl who owned a typewriter and she typed it out. And suddenly I had an idea to go and speak to the Coventry Telegraph, the local newspaper. And I said to them, I think I've written a book. Would you have a look at it? And they gave me massive encouragement and they introduced me to the Writers and Artists Yearbook. And the Writers and Artists Yearbook, listen to this, it's a portal and it contained every name and address and direct phone number of every publisher in Britain. So I'd gone from not knowing anything about publishing, nothing, and of course that blocked me, to suddenly having access to every publisher in the country, everyone. I could ring them up now and speak to them. And they would, and I've got somewhere to send my work. So success demands that we work, that we do the rigor, that we investigate. That's all out there. So that's, if you imagine that my consciousness was I was a factory worker. I worked in I lived in a terrace house. I was in an unhappy relationship. I thought that was just how things were. I was afraid to leave the factory. I blamed everybody else. It wasn't my fault. It was other people's fault that I was there. And if it wasn't for them, I'd move and all that kind of thing. So suddenly writing this book, well, I climbed my pyramid first, overcome my fears, and that expanded my consciousness because I converted darkness into light and I expanded. So suddenly I was able to see, I can go to the Telegraph. They'll talk to me. And they'll say, well, why don't you look at the Writers and Artists Yearbook? And then I rang somebody, I wrote to a few people who said, leave your number in the bin because they were the wrong people. The book said, have a read through. see what the expectations of the publishers are. You know, if they're asking for books about cats, don't send them books about dogs. You know, if they're asking for books about dogs, don't send them books about cats. No, look for somebody that, if you want to write about cats, find a publisher that wants books about cats and send them your book about cats. So I was sending my book about a Coventry bouncer to people that just weren't doing that kind of work. And some of them were horrified by it. But I ended up sending it to a new publisher. They were young students, and they're a massive company now. And they just saw a voice. And they said, yeah, we'll publish that. And suddenly my whole world transformed because I recognized everything was possible. I had that moment of yakin, certainty. You can't tell me it's not possible for a person like me to publish a book when I'm holding a published book. I'm holding it. If I can publish one book, why can't I publish two? Yes. Why can't I publish 10? I've published 50 now.
Wow.
If I can publish a book, why can't I write a film? If I can write a film, why can't I do a play? Why can't I? If I can do a play, why can't I do a musical? Or as my friend said, Lawrence, musical? I said, I'm going to write a musical. And he went, musical? Like you're going to write a musical? I wrote a musical. And it was staged at the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry. And it was based on an album called We'll Live and Die in These Towns by a great Coventry band. It's a million-selling album by The Enemy. Anyway, I love the music, and I did a story for the musical, and the lead singer, Tom, did the music. And it was just, I know anything's possible. I've still got to do the work. And listen to this. Let me tell you this story. Talk about imposter. Let me tell you this amazing story. I'm at the Belgrade Theatre. I'm talking to the director, the head of the whole building, who's putting the play on, and I'm talking to the designer. And suddenly I'm in this building. I'm published. I've got books. I've had films. So I'm really expanding. And suddenly I'm sat in this room, Lawrence, and I absolutely feel like an imposter. And I think they're talking to me. And suddenly I feel as though they're taking the piss out of me. I feel as though there's two middle-class guys taking the piss. They say, we were going to put it in this room, but now we're going to put it in that room. Not going to put it in the main theatre. We're going to put it in the studio because it suits the story. And I suddenly feel outraged. And the designer looked at me and said, oh, didn't you know that? And I said, no, I didn't know it. And the director said, well, how do you feel about that? I said, not happy. And I could see the horror on their faces because this studio theatre is absolutely beautiful and perfect for our story. But I felt suddenly like it was two middle-class men and I was like a snotty, dirty, working-class tramp. That's how I felt. And part of me got up and walked out. I felt it rise in me and walk out. I'd got enough self-control to recognise that there was still an imposter in me. It wasn't an imposter syndrome, Lawrence. It was an imposter.
Right.
And he got up and he walked out. And I got back home and I sat down, I calmed myself down. I wrote to the director and I wrote to the designer and I said, please accept my apology for being ungrateful about the change of room. I said, I don't care if you hold on the roof. I said, I'm just so grateful. I love this theatre and I love your work and I trust you. And it was put onto a claim. And these two people that my ego had convinced me were middle-class snobs who were looking down on me were just the same as everybody else. They were beautifully artistic, vulnerable, sensitive, and they were just ordinary people. But I had to go and put that theatre up, that play on. I had to go and put that musical on before that imposter showed himself. He did not show himself. And I'm just talking about 4 years ago. It's not that long ago. So I was 59 before this imposter came out. He showed himself. And when he showed himself, I let him go. He was an imposter. And I didn't kill him. I just converted him into light. Anything's impossible. I was looking to do an opera after that. I wanted to do an opera. I know anything's possible. There is nothing that's not possible. I don't make the decisions myself these days. I just wait for my intuition to speak to me. But what I'm saying is that imposter thing continues, and the cleansing and the refinement and the henchness continues. And once you start to get it, the universe speaks to you. Everything speaks to you. Everything in this panpsychic universe has a voice, and it all speaks to you. I remember in the pandemic sitting outside a cafe in Coventry, freezing cold, strong wind, reading a book with a takeaway coffee because we couldn't sit inside and it was freezing. And I was reading this book and it was talking about these kind of things, about perfecting the will and about honing ourselves and making ourselves better receptacles and getting rid of these aberrations, tightening our game, tightening the room. And as I was reading, a fly landed on my page, but it wasn't a fly. It was something. It was other. I recognized it straight away. Man, it was hench. You remember Pumping Iron with Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
That kind of hench. You know what I mean? It was ripped. This fly was hench. It was like it was made out of metal. There was nothing on this fly that wasn't functional. There was nothing superfluous. There was nothing in its game. I mean, it flew through this wind. This wind was blowing me all over the place. It flew through this wind like it wasn't there. It was like an angelic experience. And I recognized this fly as a messenger. Anything with wings comes to me as a messenger. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh, how are you?" I said, "It's nice to see you." I said, "Have you got something to bring me? Have you got something to say to me?" And it walked along the page and it landed on 3 words. You know what the words were? Practice, practice, practice. It was saying, you want to make yourself hench like me. You want to be able to cut through this wind of life like it does not exist. You need to make yourself hench like me. You need to get rid of anything from your game that is not necessary. You know, this concept of the Jeep, just enough essential parts. Yeah. Hench, like my punch is hench. It just does what it needs to do. It doesn't do anything else. It's not fancy. So it just said practice, practice. And the practice is to reduce everything that's not necessary in order to increase and expand everything that is necessary. So a fly taught me that, a hench fly. So everything will speak to you if you're open to it. Your awareness goes everywhere. And that's like you said about the publishing. The publishing said to me, "Well, you've written a book, so you've started the movement. So why not get someone to type it? Here's someone to type it. Okay, make the effort, get it typed. Now, why don't you go to the Telegraph?" That's going to take a bit of courage because you're going to be afraid, because you're going to go in there and it's full of middle-class professionals and you are afraid of middle-class professionals because you don't feel worthy. But go in there anyway. When I went in there, it wasn't middle-class professionals. It was just lovely people working in a newspaper. There were no middle-class professionals. They were just people. And the girl, her name was Sue Lowry, she held my manuscript. And she said, before I read it, she said, "I need to tell you," she said, "there are 20 journalists upstairs. All of them want to write a book. All of them say they're going to write a book. None of them have written a book. You have written a book. So before I even read it, that is amazing." And she gave me such hope and such inspiration. Then she come back to me and she said, "You really have a voice. You need to work on this and you need to work on that. And this is where you can send it, but you do have a voice. You just need to." So I took it away and I tripled it, rewrote, added more. And then each time I've done it, I've obviously added more and improved more and I've learned more. But that first book, everything I do now is contained in this book, every single thing, because this book is just about truth. This book is saying, I'm afraid and I'm going to become a bouncer to overcome that fear. I want to look at it. I want to investigate. I want to do the rigor. I'm prepared to risk my life to find the truth. And I found the truth in a little nightclub in Coventry, in the back streets of Coventry. And it spread from that little nightclub, from the geometric point of a little nightclub in Coventry, it spread across the world. So suddenly I was, getting messages and calls from across the world, to the point that I got invited, as I said, to teach for Chuck Norris 3 times. Suddenly I'm sat in Las Vegas having a cup of tea with Chuck Norris, and he's talking to me about when Bruce Lee used to ring him up and say, "Do you want to come and spar?" And do you know what Chuck Norris said to me? "Jeff, anybody could do this. This is there for anybody." He said, "I only got into the martial arts because I had a stutter when I was a kid and I was nervous and I was vulnerable. So he said, I took up the martial arts and I just happened to do really well at it." And he said, and I started getting into it. And he said, I was friends with Bruce Lee. He said, Bruce got me into the films. He said, and then Bruce died. And he said, there was a vacuum, there was a space. he said, I remember thinking I'd like to do something. He said, there was me at the time and Joe Lewis. And he said, I was just like, I'm just happy to be on the set. I'm just happy to go on the set. I'll make tea. I don't care. I just want to learn. He said, and Joe was kind of saying, well, I need this and I need that. He said, I just wanted to learn. So I just was genuinely humble. He said, so I managed to take that spot. So he ends up in the films and he just says, I'm absolutely aware that anybody can do this. That's certain. Whether they will do it or not, it's not my business. But he said, I'm aware they can. And I knew it because I was sat there having tea with him. I was sat there having tea with him, with Higgin Machado and the Machado brothers, because they were teaching on the same course. Benny Akides was teaching there. And Benny Akides' wife is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Geronimo. And I've never met Benny before. He didn't know me, and I didn't know his wife. And as soon as I walked into the room, his wife made a beeline for me. She saw something. And at dinner, I've got Benny sat here, I've got Higgins sat there, and I've got Benny's wife sat with her hand on my neck, like in a meditation, telling me what's going to happen, telling me that there are spirits around me, guiding me, that I'm going to do great things. And very interesting, once she told me the message, I never saw her again. She was so kind. But I said to her, am I in the right place? And she looked at these spirits around me. She just started laughing. Instead, implicitly, she said, you sat having dinner with Chuck Norris and Higgin and Benny. You're in the right place. I think you could say you're in the right place. So just massive expansions. But to get to America, to teach for Chuck Norris, I tried to sabotage it. I tried not to go. I was too scared to go. And I was too scared to go not because of imposter syndrome, Lawrence, but because there was an imposter in there. This imposter said, you're not good enough. You don't know enough. You're just a snotty working class kid. You'll be found out there. Now I had to convert that part of me that was imposter. It was an energy in me that didn't want to go. At one point, they invited me over and I said, well, if you want me to come, it's no good me coming for a 4-day seminar. I'd need to come for 2 weeks. Make it worth my while. So I was trying to sabotage. Yeah, well, we'll put you up for 10 days. Oh, okay. Well, I can't come on my own. I need a Yuki. Yeah, we'll pay for your Yuki. Oh, you'd have to pay me this amount of money. No, I'm not bothered about the money. It's such an honor to be asked, but I was just scared.
Yes.
And said, yeah, we'll pay you that. So, and then my wife said she didn't want to go. And she's my Yuki and we do everything together. And she's my soulmate. And I don't want to go without her. But I say, that's okay. If you don't want to go, I said, I understand, but I have to go. My destiny is there. I've been called to the world stage. I'm going to expand. I need to go there and see what's there. And then there was rumors going around. Someone said, oh, you're going to go over to there. The Americans won't like that. They'll challenge you. They won't like what you're teaching. They won't like it. You're teaching preemption. You're teaching close-range preemption. You're talking about the psychology. You've got the Machados there. They're into jiu-jitsu. You've got Benny there, who's a kicker. They're not going to like it. You're going to be challenged. And then I remember speaking to my friend Rick Young, who's he's a great BJJ guy. He was a world champion BJJ, but I said to him, I've got this invite to go over to America. And but I said, these things are kind of floating around the air. And he just goes, no, that will not happen. He said, you will not go over there and receive that. He said, the Americans will receive you. He said, they're warm, they'll love you. He said, you'll be very welcome. He said, you need to go over there. And of course, when I got there, I stood in the front of, I don't know how many hundred people there were. And I could have been anywhere in the world. They were just the most lovely people. They were just the most welcome and open people. And I expanded exponentially, but I had a real struggle getting there, Lawrence, a real struggle. Not because of imposter syndrome, but because there was an imposter in me. And I had to bring that imposter out and I had to convert him. He either had to leave the house or he needed to be converted. But he was converted the moment I went there. When I come back, I expanded again. So every expansion of consciousness, to paraphrase Frank Herbert from the film Dune, every expansive consciousness, demands that you face overwhelming forces that may threaten to take you over. I mean, they may overwhelm you. There's got to be a feeling that they're going to overwhelm you. Otherwise, we have to pay for this new level of consciousness. We have to really become hands. We have to get rid of any doubts. We have to find absolute certainty. Yakin, absolute certainty. The truth is undeniably right in front of us. That's for everybody, not just for me, not just for you. That's for everybody. And all of the things that are currently holding you back, that are harbingers of doom, they're not harbingers of doom. They're messages of hope. They're talking to you. They might feel like they're battering you, but the moment you find certainty, boom, they're gone. They're out of there. These are what in Judaism, in the Kabbalah, they call them God's master swordsmen, come to help you perfect your game.
What I love about that story, two things. Firstly is when you, like you said, you went into writing, you didn't even, have a typewriter, know anyone that had a typewriter, and then you figured it out as you went. And I think too many people have these dreams and they don't get started because they don't know the other steps. But I feel like once you get started, there's that, the momentum can take you forward. The opportunities, the universe will give you answers to take it forward. So there's such a good secret. It's just get started. And the other thing,
started. First we do, then we hear.
Yes.
You make the action. You've got two forces, dark and light. You place your will force between the two. You create light, and that light will bring you the next step. I don't need the next 20 steps. I just need the next step. And then the next step will come with the next step. It's a divine sat nav. I don't need to carry a map of Europe in my head. I just need to take one step at a time and I'll be directed. But once you have one octave leap, once you go up that one octave and you have a published book, your whole reality changes. So at first, I didn't believe this was possible. Then I could see it was possible because I found evidence. There was evidence of other people like me who published books, but I didn't think it was possible for me. And I had to build that knowledge up through investigation, through study, through rigor, until I realized it was possible for me. And the moment I realized it was possible for me, it actualized in a physical book. Now, once I've got one book, that is a certainty. That's yakin, that's truth. That cannot be denied. So no matter what anybody said, because I remember one of my friends saying to me, well, you've had a bit of luck, Geoff. You've got one book published, but don't get above yourself. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, no, he's right. I shouldn't get above myself. And then I thought, no, I've had a book published. Don't tell me it's not possible. The amount of people that said to me, it won't go anywhere. One guy said to me, it won't do anything, Geoff. It's local. He said, you're not going to get any interest outside of this city. And I said, well, Radio 1 are coming to interview me on the weekend. Radio 1 were the biggest radio station probably in Europe. I said, they're coming to do a documentary about me. I'm still working the doors. I said, so it's not local, but people were very frightened of my expansion of consciousness. And they were frightened to let their own consciousness expand. They had definite beliefs about what was possible and what was not possible. But once you do one thing, you start to realize that anything's possible. Then suddenly I'm at the BAFTAs in the toilet having a conversation with LL Cool J. I said, there's this really beautiful black guy in the toilet and he looks a real impressive aura. And I just said, how are you doing? You sound a bit nervous. He was a bit, he goes, oh, I'm a bit nervous. I've got to do a little bit of talking, give an award away. And he says, how are you? I said, I'm good. I said, I'm up for an award. He goes, oh, that's really good. He goes, LL Cool J. And I said, Geoff. So suddenly I'm talking to LL Cool J in the toilets at the BAFTAs. And of course, what do I see, Lawrence? An ordinary guy, a brilliant guy, but an ordinary guy that's there, with the same nerves as everybody else. I remember going to listen to a lecture of, is it Kaufman? The guy that wrote Beautiful Mind. Not Beautiful Mind. Anyway, he's a great screenwriter. And he started his lecture, probably the greatest living screenwriter. He started his lecture at BAFTA by saying, well, I didn't want to come here because I was too scared. So he said, I thought I'd come and investigate that.
Wow.
I'd come and investigate what that was and have a look at that. And I loved that. Not just that he'd come to investigate, but that he wasn't saying, yeah, I've got it. I'm made. I'm okay. I don't feel those things. I'm human. I'm in a body. I've got a sympathetic nervous system. I still have doubts. If I'm not being tapped out now and again, am I in the room? I'm not really in the room. I like that. I like that. I'm inspired by that vulnerability, you know. I was reading Merton the other day, Thomas Merton, and I love Merton. He's a great American mystic. And he's written a book about the power of silence. And he starts the book by saying, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know if I'm on the right path. I don't know if I'm on the right path. I hope I'm on the right path. He said, all I know is I want to please you. And I feel that my pleasing you, in fact, pleases you. So please guide me, because I don't know what I'm doing. You know, and that's how I feel as well. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know who does. So I'll go to him and I ask him and I say, I haven't got a clue. I don't know what Lawrence needs to hear today. I don't know how many followers he's got. I don't know how many people watch the podcast. I just want to please you. And if I please you, I know it will serve these people. Please let me be your voice. Let me be your vessel. So I genuinely don't know what I'm doing, but I know where to go to get the right information.
But Geoff, I love that story you said about two different. You had to kill two different imposters, and when you were going, I mean, you've killed many, but just talking about with the publishing the book, and then later when you were in your late 50s, you still, like you said, they keep coming up. I think too many people are stuck in whether it's a job they don't like, but the money's good. And they think, well, if I can just stick this out 10 more years and I can retire, I'll be happy. Or they think there's some end goal. And one thing that I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's really fundamentally dear to my heart, is there's no end goal. In order to be a real, we got to keep, like you said, being self-critical and seeing where we're white belts in certain areas of our life and then trying to develop those. And there is no finish line. And I find that
the trial never ends.
Yes, and I find that actually really inspiring when you have that mentality.
We've got to celebrate that. The Kabbalah said we need to celebrate that. There is no end line, but celebrate that, because it means there's infinite growth. There's infinite growth. And if there's anxiety, that anxiety will be relieved in the volition of the work.
Right.
Demons can't cross a moving river. It means that negatives can't settle if you can constantly keep the water moving. It's a great secret from the Zohar. Demons can't cross a moving river. Just keep moving. Just keep working, and keep working in the same direction. Is this food going to take me home? What I've been taking in, what I'm giving out, is it going to take me home? Is it in accord with wisdom and love? Is it going to serve? You know, people ask me what I'm going to do next. I said, I don't know. I don't make those decisions. I just wait for instruction. I wait for the command and I follow it. At the moment, I'm writing new book, and I'm doing a film. I'm talking to you. At the moment, my only intention, my only job in the world is just to talk to you. That's it. Outside of that, nothing else. And then my next instruction will follow. And if anxiety comes up, then I just keep the river moving. It's not that I'm immune to it. You know, we've got this idea with, like I said, with the light bulb again. We're not trying to get rid of the darkness. We're not trying to get rid of dark energy. We're not trying, we're trying to unite the dark and the light together. And we unite them in the volition of the work. And the volition of the work needs to be in accord with wisdom and love. If it all sounds complicated, you can simplify it. Just be kind. See how much discipline it takes to think and say and do kind things. And if there's a part of you that's not kind to you, it's an imposter, needs to be converted. It's not an imposter syndrome. It's just an imposter.
I really love that.
A burglar in my house. It's not a burglar syndrome. It's a burglar. So that needs to be removed. But it's an energy. It needs to be converted. And that's the work. That's the investigation. If you're in a depression right now, you watching this, if you're in a depression, if you're in anxiety, it's a Dharma gate. It's an open door to a university that's asking you to come in and learn. Use that as an energy. The moment you become curious about those feelings, they will start to dissipate. They'll go, oh, he's listening. Now he's listening. He's not trying to cover us up. He's not trying to hide from us. He's listening. We've got to, as much as we can, embrace an intercourse with these feelings until there is no longer dark and light. There is just light. But that's, like I said to you before, Lawrence, it's never ending, because it's like a dynamo. The soul is like a dynamo when it's in the body. It's only lighting while we're pedaling. So there isn't a point where we can go, oh, I can relax and let that go now. We do that, then the light diminishes. So it is it's a doing. Is it a noun, a doing word? Yeah, I think a noun is a doing word, isn't it?
I think so.
Is it a
I always
verb?
forget.
I always forget. So it's an action. It's not just a concept.
Right.
Now, this sense of this sense of creating light is a movement. If you want more light, we need to pedal more. So for me to create more light, and of course the light means we take the anxiety and we take the good and the bad. The aspiration, the anxiety, or the fear and the dread. We bring them together in the volition of the work. That might be as little as I want to go to the gym today, can't be bothered, it's too lazy, it's too painful. We put our will between the two and we get ourselves to the gym. We create light. But that's a continual thing. But it means we have an infinite potential to learn, to grow. It is infinite, it's never ending. And we need to celebrate that. So there shouldn't be a point where we're thinking, this is relentless. That's an imposter. Not an imposter syndrome. It's a part of you that's an imposter going, don't know why I'm here. This is relentless. That needs to be brought into the work, needs to be investigated, needs to be converted. So it's not relentless. It's infinite. So it's not a torture. It's actually a transition. It's transfiguration. But that means we've got to keep pedaling. But it's a lot easier to keep pedaling than it is to stop and then start again. Stop and then start again. But just keep moving. Just keep moving. Just keep producing. And if there are areas in you that are in doubt, that's great. They contain energy. If there's areas in you that are fearful, that's great. They contain energy. That needs to be converted. Investigate it thoroughly. Beyond all of that, there is stillness, there's silence. There is an unmoving, indivisible, authentic self. That's the part of us where, it's there all the time. We just need to reveal it. We just need to remove the obscurations. And that continues to be the work for me. Constantly contract so I can constantly expand. Constantly expand so I can constantly contract. I spoke to Gandhi in a meditation once, and I said to him, how can I improve? And he said, make yourself small. And then I spoke to Uri Geller on the telephone. He was working with a friend of mine. I said, Uri, how can I improve? And he said, Geoff, you need to expand. Both of them were saying the same thing. When you expand in consciousness through meditation, through qigong, through charity, through kindness, when you expand consciousness, automatically contracts ego. And Gandhi was the same. Make yourself small. Get rid of all the things that aren't authentic, that are not in accord with wisdom and love. Get rid of them. In other words, make yourself small. In other words, reduce the ego, reduce the me, the mine, the I. What's in this for me? Get rid of all that. Just look at where you can serve, because you'll be sated. If you're the one that's receiving all the light to give to other people, you're going to be sated absolutely fine. Everything you will come and more will come. Everything you want and more will come. So we need to contract in order to expand. We need to expand in order to contract. So we're hitting it from both ends. We're doing the meditation. We're doing the charity. We're doing the kindness. We're doing the mitzvah. But we're also actively working on reducing the ego by not thinking selfishly all the time. This is about reversing what most of society tends to think and do.
Right. Yeah, because in society, you always want more. You're never satisfied.
Yeah, everyone's greedy. Everyone's hungry. Everyone's complaining about the wealth divide and all the rest of it. But if there's a wealth divide, it's just a divide of knowledge within us. We need to close the wealth divide within ourselves. There's parts of me that are rich with knowledge. There are parts of me that are still ignorant. Parts of me that are kind. There are parts of me that are not kind. So we need to find equity within ourselves. And then when we find equity within ourselves, we'll find equity in the world. We'll start bringing equity into the world. So we've got to win back and bring peace to our territories, our own nations within us. Then when we do that, we'll see the effect in the world around us. But that's the work. That's a big job right there. Mm. It's easy to sit in your bedroom shouting at the internet because of corrupt politicians or because of greedy bankers or because of violent terrorists. But believe me, there are corrupt politicians in you. There are violent terrorists in you. There are greedy bankers in you. Convert them, remove them. Once you remove them, you'll just be looking at that stuff out there thinking, where can I serve? Where can I help? My job isn't to fix somebody across the water. My job is to unify myself. And in unifying myself, I'm contributing peace to the world automatically, even if nobody knows me.
Geoff, I want to be respectful of your time because I will talk to you all night. But can I ask you one more thing? This is
Yes.
very, very personal because I'm sure you must have gone through something. When you were at your physical peak, training like an absolute savage, I'm sure there was obviously a decline from then to now, just naturally as we're getting older. And so as someone in my mid-40s now, where my body's slowing down and my neck hurts, my back hurts, my knees are achy, just from all the years of abuse on my body, I'm kind of struggling I'm trying to not let it affect me, but it does get me down a little bit. And I feel like like when I was younger, I used to think, it's tough for the beautiful woman who her looks get her these things. And then when she gets older, she loses the beauty. And that's kind of well known. But what I didn't understand is so many of my friends that are the same age that were, high level athletes or former fighters, we're all kind of going through it. And it's kind of tough. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice for me to accept aging gracefully?
This is just a call to Budo. This is a call to go to the higher level. So we reach a high level physically, and then we're called to follow the same traits psychologically, and it automatically spills into the spiritual. So you're like a long line of masters before you, like Ushiba, like Masoshi, and people like that. They all transcended into the spiritual Budo realms, all of them. That's what you need to do. It's very difficult. I did it by piecemeal. I let go of the physical. As I let go of the physical more and more, I just increased the internal work. So it demands the same kind of courage, the same kind of stamina, the same kind of intrigue and knowledge, but we're expanding inside, not outside. So I just do enough with my physical body to maintain it so that it's a good vessel. That's it. And the ego wants to hold on to the physical, but it's not because we're getting older. It's just because we're being called to our higher level of duty. Mm. So we want to be able to sit in a room and the room be changed because we're there, not because we're a great jiu-jitsu player, but because we are full of spirit, because we've made our body perfect for spirit. So it's not trying to hold on to the physical. It's trying to listen to the intuition, and the intuition, this is what they say in Judaism, the soul will teach you. And the soul will say, okay, you need to let go of that now because you've got everything you need from that. There's no more wine to get out of that grape. You need to move to a higher level. So you're like some of the other senior martial artists I've seen, they're being called to the Budo, and the resistance is difficult because you want to stay physical and you want to keep all that. But everything you're letting go of in the physical is like a grain of sand compared to what you're going to receive. But that's the new level of training. The new level of training is to go inside rather than outside. So we do that gradually. And we start to bring in the Qigong or the Tai Chi or the yoga. Like if you look at someone like Dorian Yates, he's gone from this very physical man to, he's a yoga guy now. Lives a very peaceful life. But there's a transitional period, and he puts the same kind of intention, the same kind of dedication and the same kind of courage into that internal work. You don't have to do it all in one go. You want to get it so that your internal congruence is so beautiful that it brings tears to people's eyes when they see it. They don't care whether you can still, do a juji roll, whether you still can do a leg strangle. They're not bothered about that. They just want to be in your presence. They don't even really care what you say. They just want to feel your atmosphere. So this is the Budo. And this is the path I'm trying to guide people on myself and say, at some point you need to let go of the physical and start going up to the higher level of training. It's hard. It's just as hard in a different way. Like I said, it takes just as much courage. And I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you who knows what you need to do. And you'll find him through meditation. You'll find him through prayer. So you just go, okay, I'm in this place. I'm struggling with this transition. Please guide me. I can't tell you how long it stopped me to stop hitting the bag and to stop lifting heavy weights and because I just wanted to keep hold of something, some kind of security. And this was saying to me, you need to let go of all that security, because that security is an egoic thing. There's no security. There's no security in that physical ability, and there's no security in money. There's no security in any of it. They can be taken like that. There's only security in going beyond all that and finding the self at the back of it. You know, finding this stillness, finding this, as Dogen would say, finding this body that is skinless and boneless, that is indivisible, that's unchanging. That's your new level of training. If I was you, I'd be excited about that, and I would start to investigate it. And then you don't have to let go of everything in one go. You just gradually move from one to the other. The transition is so slow that people will hardly notice. I don't make any big announcements about it. Just move from one area to the next.
Geoff, I appreciate you sharing that with me a lot. That means a lot. I'm going to really digest what you said, and you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. I just reached out to you a few days ago, and you booked this very quickly. And I know, as I'm sure you do, you know, time is our most valuable asset. And the fact you gave me, you know, nearly 2 hours this morning, I really, really appreciate you. They say don't meet your the people that inspire you, your idols, because often you're disappointed. But it's the opposite with you. You're everything I expected and hoped. And I just really, really appreciate you, Geoff. And anyone listening, you know, he's got so many amazing books. Watch My Back is such a classic, but there's so many books on, you know, Hunting the Shadow is fantastic. Everything That Happens to Me is fantastic. That's another great book. You've got so many great books. So I really recommend people check out your work and check you out.